I'm really happy to introduce you. My dad, Gary, is here from. I don't know where you live now. Are you in Indian? Are you claim? I heard you earlier claim Indianapolis.
I'm trying to be a snowbird.
Okay, so
So
Florida.
I've got the Stewart thing lined up and
Yeah,
working on the Indianapolis thing. So.
yeah. So Palm Beach some of the time and Indianapolis some of the time. So really glad that you're here. I want to start out by saying this. Tonight we're going to talk. We started in our check-in with alumni just talking about our dads, and I think for us guys, it's really a big deal. Like we were talking about earlier, maybe one of the most important, if not the most important relationship in our lives as far as what forms us and shapes us, has a lot to do with our dad, who our dad is. And I understand that in this room, there's going to be a wide spectrum of feelings and thoughts when it comes to fatherhood. Even if you are a dad, that's going to shape a lot. And so I want to just start out by saying this is a really safe place, and I actually kind of like the size of the room tonight because I think we can just have more of a conversation about this and continue that. But I've been fortunate because I have a dad, and I'm going to do my best not to get emotional tonight, but no promises, right? But I have a dad who's been a very safe place for me to process what I was going through. This goes back a long time. This goes back to we actually pastored together for a while. Dad, I grew up as a pastor's kid, so grew up in the church. A lot of my wounding in my life that I've had to work through has come at the hands of the church that he was leading. And so I've had to go back and do a lot of work on that. I've had to go back and do work on, going through those stages of like, man, if Dad would have done this, that, or the other, that wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't experience that pain. And having to process that. But having a dad that I've been able to like have these conversations with. I remember one time you might remember this better than me, but I went to you and I was just like, we were pastoring. This might have been the first time we were working together when I was doing music. And I was just like, I didn't want to, I've always wanted to make Dad happy and proud. That was a big deal. I played basketball, played sports, come through. Dad's a great athlete. And he was at every game. He was coaching the games and at the games, whatever. But probably the most fun game I ever played was the one game he didn't show up because pressure was off. Now, he just asked me yesterday in the truck, and this is the kind of dad he is. He said, hey, did I ever make you feel like you had to perform to like win my approval and my affection? Which, what a hell of a question for a dad to ask. And the truth was no. He didn't put that pressure on me, but I felt as the oldest, I wanted Dad to be proud. So I wanted to play well. So when he didn't show up, I was like, hey, pressure's off. Let's just go have fun. Dad's not here. But I wanted to have this conversation because doing my work here at Valiant, reparenting, going back into childhood. In the interview I did with Michael Sims, he quoted Freud that said, no one gets out of childhood unscathed. So whether you've had an awesome dad or your dad was the worst, there's going to be wounds that we've all experienced. I mean, my kids are going to have wounds that hopefully that they go and are able to get treated for and helped for. It's like, it doesn't matter how good you are. So I think and I'm talking a lot here in the beginning, I'm going to turn it over to you, but I think part of the healing process is going through all the stages of like anger and all the different things, and then me getting to the place where it's like, and Dad and I talked about this, man, Mom and Dad in my case were doing the very best they could with what they were given. Like and I hope my kids give me that same grace. Like, hey, Dad wasn't perfect, but he did the very best he could. And I've told my older daughters now, hey, I want to help you and even pay for your therapy to go get the other things that I wasn't able to. I wasn't meant to fill all the voids and all the holes in your life, all those things. So anyway, I just want to kind of put that disclaimer out front that if anything rises up in you about, like during this conversation, oh man, I wish I could have had this conversation with my dad, or what, like that, this is a safe place to have those feelings and even process those feelings. And then I want to leave some space here at the end for just conversation or even questions for him. Dad's would be the first to tell you he's not a therapist. He has been a pastor for, 120 years? What was it?
58.
58 years. Mostly in music. I'll brag on him a little bit. I don't know how many Southern gospel fans we have here, but the best of the best was Bill Gaither. Bill Gaither is known as the guy in that. Dad and Bill were business partners back in the day. Dad was his first guitar player. We went on the road as kids with the Gaithers, so he's kind of a legend and a stud in the music arena. But Dad, welcome.
Thank you.
Just kick us off. Tell us a little bit where you grew up, how you grew up. What was your family like growing up?
I have an unusual situation in the fact that you've heard of husbands and wives that pastor together. My mom and dad pastored separate churches, and I've never been able to. At the same time? Yeah, at the same time, and I never have heard of that before. And people used to ask me, well, what church did you go to? Well, I said my dad's church was my Sunday morning church, but at nighttime, when I was 6 foot tall, when I was in high school, I would be my mother's protector. I'd go to her church on Sunday nights, and that was my responsibility.
Yeah.
But it is unusual. You hear how pastors' kids turn out bad so often. I can explain that to you after a while if you got time. But it's something that you learn to deal with, and even what we learned with Drew was very painful to me because I didn't realize the hardest thing for a pastor is when someone will leave the church. And interesting, if you ever leave a church, would you mind just telling the pastor why you're going, or don't just disappear? And so we were a very relational church, but I didn't realize what it was doing to him. I was just trying to survive the thing, and I thought, well, I never thought about the kids. I just didn't think, you're losing your friends. They're gone to another church. They're not speaking to. It never, and that's been very hurtful to me because I feel so bad about that. Nothing I can do about it now. But I was not. I guess I was just trying to survive, trying to get through it.
Well, and even me hearing you say that even now is healing, because I think you are doing something about it, which is you're showing up for me in these moments where I've had a lot of trouble going back into my history and talking about childhood wounds because I feel like I've had great parents. So I've been in my therapy very defensive specifically of my dad, because I'm like, he didn't do anything but his very best, right? So I'm in that camp, and I know not all of us are in that camp, right? But I think being able to have these conversations has been really healing and really helpful. Of like, man, I didn't know, I didn't see that. I mean, even me hearing that now brings healing. A little context to our family. So we had a church of a couple hundred people. It wasn't a very big church, but like Dad said, very relational, and then also a really large homeschool community. And so we went through several really massive church splits where a good chunk of the church left at one time. Now, for you might say, what's the big deal? For us, this was like the family business. This is what we poured our life into, and we were homeschooled. These were our friends. These were all of our relationships. And as a kid, when overnight half of your friends for no reason just leave, and you're walking in the grocery store and they turn and go the other way for no reason, and that happens enough, the narrative that I begin to believe is that people leave you if you don't perform well enough for them. And so for us as a church, because we were always really involved, playing music and everything else, if we'd have done a better job, they would not have left. Or specifically, if Dad would have done a better job, these people wouldn't have left. So I grew up saying, well, I'm going to be a leader of all leaders. I'm going to chain smoke every leadership book, because no one is going to leave me because of my poor leadership. That's never going to happen. Well, guess what? It happened over and over and over again, and I'm left with this identity of like, I don't know who the hell I am. I don't know what's going on. And it was always performance, performance, performance. So I would get up on Sundays and preach to thousands of people when my inner life behind the scenes was just crumbling. But I could put on a show. We knew how to do this. We knew how to get up and perform. But over time, my soul just got so detached because it wasn't who I was, and I'm trying to win approval. So a little background and context to what Dad was saying. You have an amazing story. I'd love to be able to take a few hours and just talk about your music and, pastoring, all that kind of stuff. But I want to, for the sake of tonight, I want to just fast forward and jump to the summer of 2022.
Okay.
I'm working at this big church in Nashville, and I really sensed Dad's pride in what I was doing. If I would ever preach and he'd get the video, he would be a typical dad. People would come over for dinner and he'd put on the video of me preaching, and I'm like, Dad, they don't want to watch this video of me preaching. Oh,
They had to watch it.
Look at what my son, look at what he, whatever.
They're at my house, they're going to watch it.
Right. I'm like, no one wants to see me preaching on this thing. So when my world implodes and I'm found out to be, at that time, to be a fraud, the word that was used is disqualified from ministry. So they get up on stage and tell the whole church, he's been disqualified. And that was the last they heard from me. There's an intervention. They get me on a plane to Denver. One of the hardest things was for me to face Dad and say, Dad, I blew it. Like, I'm not there anymore. I was fired. I was sent to rehab. Here's what happened. I was having an affair. I had to sit down. I had to tell him all these things. Man, I was just like, and he was very gracious in his response. But I'm curious, like, take us back to summer of 2022 from a father's standpoint. You hear all this happens.
Well, I think to start with, it was such a crazy blindside, because this guy did everything right, made the right decisions, worked at church, never complained. I got to play guitar. Played, how many years did he play guitar? Every Sunday. Didn't have a choice to miss, because that's your job, And it just, even the first night he came home from the hospital, he slept all night. But that blind side was like, I just couldn't hardly believe it was real, because he had just made the right choices and did the right thing, and I think that where the pain for me was for you. It wasn't like it was like he's worked this hard to get to where he is, and unfortunately the church is so unforgiving. Unfortunately, don't let me get on that subject. But it's over. He doesn't have a job now, and he'll never be able to go back to that. And he'll be, and I know this sounds like a dad, but the man is a good communicator. I can't carry his Bible to the pulpit. He is a good communicator, but that's not a possibility now, because the church. You can't make a mistake at church. I don't know what your church is like, but if you make a mistake, out, you're out, get out. We don't even want to know about it, But my pain was at that point, and I think that I was just trying to think about where do you go from here? We didn't know anything about at that point, Valiant or anything else, and I didn't know a lot of places where there'd been a lot of success, and my fear was, can he get past this? Can he overcome it? Can he? That was such a real fear, and I think for some of you have mentioned the higher power. The only way I could get through that for you was to say, hey, is this real or not? I've given my life to this. Can you do something in this case? And my thought was, yes, he can. And that's what I held on to, because when I would go to the other side and think about the fearful side of, it would take me down. When I say take me down, I don't deal with depression, but that would take me out.
There's one of my first couple weeks here, and I don't know if anybody else relates to this, but for me, my first couple weeks of PHP was just brutal. I was fortunate Fletch was with me during that, really happy that you get to meet Dad tonight, Fletch, because Fletch and I journeyed through a lot of stuff together. But I was in this constant state of, what am I doing here? I don't have contact with my family, with my wife. For all I know, I've lost my family, I've lost my wife, my kids I may not ever talk to again. I mean, all these stories I'm writing. I've lost my church community, I've got nothing, I don't even have a career. We were raised in this. I don't know what I even do. I don't even know what I'm good at besides this. This is what so now I'm like, I'm just hitting a total reset. And I remember, learning through some of the IFS stuff and the parts work that they teach us here and all this stuff. And at that time, I don't know if it's still happening, but Dano was doing an ACA group. We do it on the back porch there. Really helpful group for me. I'm glad I see some of you shaking your head. I'm glad it's still going, because I had no context for any of this. I actually had no context for addiction. I didn't know I had anxiety, and I didn't know I was an addict before I came here. I just would have told you, I'm just future focused, I'm a leader, I'm a go-getter, I'm a whatever. And I got here and they're like, do you have anxiety? I'm like, no. Well, take this assessment. And I was like off the charts for anxiety and all this stuff. So we're doing the ACA, and I'm learning about just childhood wounding and all this kind of stuff. And there was a moment, and I want you to share what it was like being on the other side of this phone call, because I call Mom and Dad, and I'm pacing in the field at Foxfield, and I'm weeping, and I'm like, I can't do this. I just can't stay here. I gotta get out of here. I just cannot do it anymore. And in that moment, it was so beautiful, because here I am, 40 years old at the time, and Mom and Dad parented me in that moment like I needed to be parent. It was not Drew, it was young Andrew who was crying out for help, quite literally, needing parents to show up. Fortunately, I had them. I called them, and I remember Mom was doing, I think, most of the talking.
Yeah.
And Mom was just saying, hey, you're in the right place. You're doing, and I was so grateful she didn't say leave, because I would have been gone. If Mom would have said, hey, just come home, we'll take care of you, I'd have been out. Mom, you're doing the right thing. You're where you need to be. Remember why you're doing this, all this, and just really just parented me through it, what I needed to hear. You were on the phone too, and Mom and Dad have reached that age. I don't know what age you get to, but when you call one of them, you get both of them all the time. I don't know what age that is, but I don't know why they have two phones. Just call one of them, and you're going to have both of them on the phone. So
I don't even know why we have two cars.
Yeah, it's a joint thing now. But what was that like? What was that call like for you? Do you remember that?
Oh man, remember it. It's like a living nightmare, because I couldn't give you any percentage of. I didn't think 10% you could stay. I mean, you were just so far down, and you were just your emotions were gone. Everything, it just seemed like. And I was kind of glad you're talking to your mom, because moms just have more compassion. Is that okay to say? I mean, they just can kind of get in there. But I was pacing the floor as well, and just thinking. In my mind, I was thinking, he can't leave. If he leaves, it's over. I mean, his life is over. 'Cause he's not gonna turn. If it can't be turned around here, I just didn't think it could be turned around. And that was the fearful part for me again, to realize that I'm thinking. We're gonna get on a plane in the morning. I guess we're going to Denver, because I'm serious. We're gonna go to Denver, and he's gonna stay. And whatever we have to try to do, But
yeah, I think I was just looking for someone to permission me to leave, and you guys kind of held that line for me. I'm curious, as I was processing through things and having to go back into my childhood, especially going back into some old woundings and some old things that we as a family were a part of, what did that bring up for you? What did that do for you? How did you feel when I'm having to challenge things that are kind of hardwired into the DNA of our family fabric?
yeah, um, I guess the fact that I felt pretty guilty that I was so unaware, that it was so hard on you. At that point in time, I really didn't know how to deal with that. I guess I was dealing with my own issue, but I just never realized that it was taking such a toll and continued to do that. And after he's come back a few times, we've talked, and it from a pastor's standpoint, I think every pastor should have to go through training to understand addiction, because he's told me so much stuff that I was just totally not aware of, and I think that, because let's face it, it's everywhere out there. Whether the people will admit it or not, it's everywhere, everywhere, and to see how that all connected. Here again, you can't go back and fix it now, but
sure, and I wouldn't want to. I think it's part of shaping who we've become and all those things. So I don't even think I have the desire to go back and fix any of those things. I'm grateful for what I've learned and all those. Go ahead.
One thing you said, I think he was. I can remember this so very plain, because there was a family in the church that we had rented them a house, and it was a single mom with 3 kids, and we had put them in the house and took furniture from our house and put it in their house, and the week that they left the church, I think you were somewhere around maybe 12 or 13, and he said to me, Dad, why is it the people that you help so much always poop on you? And he used the word poop because we didn't, pretty legalistic in our house. We didn't use the cuss words then. We use them a little bit now on occasion. We feel freedom, but we have, if it helps make our point. But he says, why do the people you help the most poop on you? And you know what? I should have picked up on that, because that was you were hurting for me at that point, to say, gosh, my dad did all this stuff and they're blown down.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because a lot of my hurt was, I will never let myself go through what I've seen my dad go through. Even going into ministry, it was like, I'll keep people at a distance, but I'm not going to let anybody in close enough or care deep enough, because they're all, the narrative that I have is everyone is going to leave you at some point. It's not, if, it's when. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. And so you go into everything, every relationship, every business deal, everything I have. Even this week we joked, because there was something I was going into to have a conversation with a client, and I couldn't sleep the night before. I was writing all these stories, and it turned out to be the exact opposite of what I thought was going to happen. But I still have this hard wire of, they're going to leave. That's what they do. The people that you help the most. And so, and there's a lot we can say about that. I think in doing work, you realize that that's not why you do it. There's a lot of things we can go down the road, but yeah, that narrative was shaped pretty early on. So I think a lot of times we do pick up hurt on behalf of the people that we love, and then that's what ends up shaping us, because it wasn't really done directly to me. It was done to you or our family, or maybe not even done to us, but it just happened.
It just happened.
Spiritually speaking, so in this room, I don't know everyone's religious affiliation background, but something that part of our program is very much so. It starts out step 1 talking about this higher power, right? That we need a power beyond ourselves. A big part of our family's history has all been about, we've been in the business, if you will, of spirituality and faith. I've always seen it as a very personal thing for you. One thing I've always seen in you is a consistency between the stage and off stage, more so than what I had. It was very much, your faith was real to you. It wasn't like a performance on Sunday, and that kind of helped me stay in the game spiritually for a long time, because was like, this is real for Dad. This isn't a show or a game or whatever. But I'm curious, and we haven't talked about this specifically, but over the last few years with what our families walk through, is there anything you see different now? Because like I go through this deconstruction process, very similar thing. I'm laying in the bed in Foxville, I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I'm saying, God, I don't know if this whole thing was bullshit or not, but if it's real and you're real, then we're going to hit the reset button and start over, because what I've been doing up to this point has not been working. So I never got mad at God and never was like out on God. I definitely had my anger towards institutional churches, but God and I always stayed cool, but we had to really do redefine the relationship conversation, and we had to rebuild. So, and what I've rebuilt is some things are very similar and some things are very different from what I've rebuilt from, what we grew up in. We joked a little bit about legalism. I mean, the legalism that existed in your family growing up. What movie was it?
Hey, that's nothing to joke about, the legalism.
Yeah.
We were coming home from school and went coming up by the movie theater, and this will put some age on me. But Bambi had just come out. And the kids were going to see, and I called my dad and said, hey, Dad, everyone's going to see Bambi, and I got my own money. And he said, well, what, I don't know. I guess I'll probably have to change jobs because our church doesn't believe in movies. I said, oh, you don't need to change job. I don't need to see it. Hang up. Okay.
Talk about shaping somebody.
There's something you can carry for a while.
Yeah.
78 years. But
yeah.
But
gotta resign my ministry job if you go see Bambi.
And I wouldn't have, man. My dad and I had a great. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think even, going through this with you, it's changed some of my philosophy in terms of the church and religion, not for God. I've never been able to find a theologian that could tell me why Jesus' first line of his first public message, first line, said, blessed are they that can realize their need. Now, the King James says poor in spirit. Blessed are they that can realize their need, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What is the kingdom of heaven? The kingdom of heaven is God's total answer for man's total need. And I've lived with that to say, the older I get, the more I realize my need. I have more needs now than I ever have. I mean, man, I get up in the morning and think, what is that? Gosh, the knee went out over the night. I mean, God, what's happening? But also in my nervous system, in my emotions, in my thinking. Mm-hmm. I realize my need, and when I realize my need, then that's when I get to go into the next gear, which is the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell you, if you've never tried it, it works. And I couldn't have got through your experience without the crutch. I mean, it was a crutch, and I used it a lot, and it worked. Mm-hmm. And you're the proof of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking earlier we were talking about fatherhood, and again, the God and higher power language is not foreign to any of us in this room have been in any kind of 12-step or whatever, and we all have I won't call anybody out, but there's guys in this room that I know, we have very complicated relationship with church and God because of how it was used towards us growing up, and so it's a very complicated thing to try to navigate and detangle and whatever. I do think it's interesting that oftentimes in our 12-step rooms when we pray, we do the serenity prayer a lot, but we also do the Lord's Prayer a lot too. It's just something that's part of our our rhythm and our tradition and all those things. I was thinking earlier about the relationship between a father, son, and how important that is, and how that very prayer that we pray every time was a prayer that Jesus gave us to teach us. I want to teach you how to pray. And I've always thought it was interesting that he didn't say pray and say, our creator or our most wonderful, magnificent God. And he starts by saying, and in the Greek actually translates it to daddy. Like when we say our Father who art in heaven, we're saying dad. Like it's even Jesus saying, hey, this daddy thing, this father deal, pay attention to that. And actually when you relate to God, that is the kind of relationship I want you to relate to God with. Now it's problematic because we've all had earthly fathers who are all flawed. Every single one of them. No one here has had a perfect one. And so it puts a complicated relationship between us and God if we're supposed to relate to God as a dad. Because our dad might be stoic and we don't know how to receive compassion and affection, or our dad might be highly emotional, our dad might be an addict and doesn't know how to draw boundaries. I mean, we got all these things, and so we then project that on our higher power because that's the only thing we know how to compare it to. So I think it's really something we should pay attention to. Something I've had to pay attention to is, okay, how has my relationship with you impacted how I see my higher power and how I relate, and then how do I need to be open to receiving a different version of that based on my experience. So we've talked quite a bit. I'm curious, what's coming up for you guys? What questions do you have, comments, or even just what are you feeling? Like, what do you got? What's going on? And I'm actually, this time, I'm going to run this little mic around so we can hear it.
Well, how I would have longed to have had such a conversation with my dad. It is really a gift. Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question of you. You said three things that have stuck with me really strongly. One of which was, don't get you started on the church. Or the church's response, let's say. The second thing was how much you were beyond prideful but loved hearing your son preach. And then a concern about a concern both for your son's future, but also a statement about every pastor should learn something about addiction because it's out there and everybody needs some help. So my question to you is, given all of that, do you see a church in your son's future where that could be a piece of the loving message from the pulpit? Is that a possibility in the world you've lived through?
Wow.
We can go there if we want to go there.
My first response is the name of the church. Is that strange or what?
It's okay, dude.
The name of the church is Mercy Road. And it would have to start from the ground up. It would have to be totally different from anything we've ever known or seen. It would have to be right. I mean, the church is so far from what the early church started as. It's so far that only God Himself could fix it. And I don't know what I don't know where to, can you help me out? I don't know where to kind of go from there, but I would love to see the church be what God intended it to be. And I'll be honest with you, I'm at a place where I go to my brother-in-law's church just to encourage him. He started out in ministry under me many years ago, but when I'm in Stewart, I don't go to church, and that's from my background and legalism and everything, that's really bad. I don't go, but I can't find a place, and I think that I think when the church is what it's supposed to be, you can take this group right and throw it right in the center of it. I mean, it gives me cold chills when I say that, because that would make the difference. That would do it. I really appreciate your question. That is so awesome.
Could I just chime, and I won't go off on a rant because I could, but I won't. I will say I have experienced some really beautiful spiritual communities, and so I want to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm happy to even mention some names. I've been involved with Red Rocks Church here in town that has done a beautiful job with holding brokenness and pain and also the mercy of God in the same place. Free Church here in town is another one that I've been there several times. Fletch and I went there together. We had a really powerful experience when we went there. Fletch can tell you his own story, but we've got similarities in our backgrounds when it comes to religion and all that stuff. And so I think the key to it is it's about honesty. Like, I don't, to your question, you asked him, not me, I really don't have a desire to do that anymore if it's not going to be, if it can't be honest. And most churches, evangelical churches, where it's grown to today is there's just a general lack of honesty and knowing what to do with brokenness, knowing what to do with addicts, which, spoiler alert, everyone has an unhealthy scape they go to. It's on a spectrum. Not all of them need to come to Valiant for 90, 120 days, whatever, but all of them have something that they're going to go to that is potentially unhealthy for them if they're not careful. So, like, I think we have to demystify this addict term and make it broader. Like, what is your unhealthy cope that you go to? But I have found more church in these rooms and 12-step rooms and my brothers here at Valiant than I ever found in 40 years of being in the institutional church because of honesty. And the scripture even says, confess your sins to one another so that you may be healed. There's such a lack of, this is where actually our Catholic brothers and sisters have got it more right than we have, but there's such a lack of confession and honesty in most of our churches. So if I don't have a place to confess and be honest, how then do I experience healing? I think it's really interesting that it didn't say confess your sins to one another and then God would heal you. God delegated healing to us. He said, confess your sins to one another, and that is how you find healing. And we wonder why there's so many sick people still sitting in our churches when there's not forums like this to confess and to find healing. Like, I get healing when I sit here with you guys and say, man, I really screwed up this week, or I'm really struggling with this, or I had this temptation or whatever. And so I'm not here to like throw shame on the church. There's a really beautiful book. I actually shared it with you, Tim. I think I did, or I meant to, called The Critical Journey. But it talks about 7 stages in the faith, in someone's faith cycle. And the church does the first 3 really well. They just don't know what to do when you hit the wall. Our Catholic brothers and sisters call it the dark night of the soul. When that happens, and it does happen for most of us, if we're lucky it happens, because that's the only thing that gets us to a life of surrender and love. But they do the first 3 great, but when the scriptures stop working for you and the small groups and the showing up on Sunday and all that stuff breaks down and checking the boxes don't work for you anymore, most churches, their only solution is, well, go back to the beginning and just keep doing those 3 over and over again, and not real sure how to walk with people through the darkness and the brokenness. So if you can find a community that is willing to wade out into the darkness and the brokenness with you. My church was incredible. I mean, they were incredible in helping me get the help that I needed. So on one hand, the part of me is eternally grateful for my church that got me the help I needed. They made it happen for me to come here. What's also true is my church didn't know how to show up relationally and spiritually for my family. It was like, hey, go get help, but was literally asked to not contact anybody here ever again. So, I mean, that doesn't mind, I won't say it because this is going out in the cyber internet, but mom's listening. But yeah, it's like, but I hold that tension. I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for my church in powerful ways. And my family is carrying a lot of wounding because we felt exiled.
the love that we feel here. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I've enjoyed being, I sit beside this guy over there. I felt there's such a connection. This is what the gospel intended. It was about love, and I felt it in that room. I just enjoyed, being over there. I enjoyed being here. It's going on. I can feel it in my spirit, man. I don't know if that's weirding anybody out, but I feel it. It's neat.
Because I think it's these guys that what I love about us too as brothers is hopefully to whatever degree possible we've stopped pretending with one another. Like we've stopped trying to present ourselves like I gotta tell you, I wouldn't tell you all their stories. These are great, successful, amazing men in this world. In this world, but is extremely successful. But our inner, started falling apart. Well, this is a place where we can come, and it's so safe for us to be human. And I think that's where the real love comes from. Is hey, I don't have to perform for Pete. He loves me if I'm, no matter what. It's only in isolation where we start writing stories about what our brothers think of us, and that's when we get pissed with one another. Like, why didn't you call me? I didn't know you were struggling. I would have shown up for you. Great stuff. Anybody else? More comments, thoughts, feelings, questions? This is good stuff. I don't even know what time it is. So are we past? Pete doesn't care. Chester's waiting for you, man.
I just have a quick comment, and thank you for being here tonight. It's when you were just talking a second ago about the kind of the love that's in the room, you shared something pretty early on. Drew asked you kind of what pain this had caused you, and your response blew my mind. And it kind of sent chills through me for you to say your pain was for Drew. To be able to be at that point in your spirituality and faith and all that kind of stuff is amazing. And that's and you hear that because as an alcoholic, one of the things to suffer from a lot, especially when we're in Valiant and kind of just doing the stare at the ceiling, going, oh my God, what's going to happen? What kind of pain have I caused others? That's very dreadful. Not to say that we haven't caused pain, and certainly we got to go, and that's part of the amends process in order to relieve ourselves of that. But I'll always remember that reply that you gave to Drew about that. That was
It's a gift.
pretty, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Joel.
Thanks for coming here tonight. Drew and I are of an age, and by extrapolation, I figure you're probably around the same age as my father, give or take.
78.
Oh, no, he's a bit behind you then, but not by much. I was just wondering, he is not recovery informed. He is not aware of addiction. He's pastoring in a church right now himself, but I'm just curious, from speaking as a father of a man who's been through addiction, rehabilitation, and his ongoing recovery, what would be a message that I could give to my father to help him recover with me?
Fantastic question. Good luck with that. It's a great question.
You
And that's an all skate, by the way. If anyone has any feedback on that, feel free to jump in.
I don't know that. I learned early in the ministry 3 words that were very important to me. I don't know. But in my spirit, man, I feel like for you, just you evidently have a okay relationship with him, or okay. I would say just begin loving him the very, very best you can, and praying for him, and just let's see what the higher power would could do with that, because sometimes we think we can fix things. You know, we all want to fix things, don't we? I mean, that makes us. But sometimes that it's just not up to us. But I think the fact that, you know, I'm sure he's your dad. He cares about you too. But just to show him, I just try to be as absolute supportive and loving as I possibly could, and just see what happens. You know, anyone else is welcome to help, because
it's a risk, to be honest. I mean, I had to take that risk with you, where it was, hey, he may not understand any of this. He may not get any of this. And you've been like a sponge. You've been like, oh my God, like, you know, and that may not be received that way, but Deneen, we were actually having a conversation earlier, and he talked to this a little bit. I'm looking at you, Pete, because I might need some help recalling exactly what he said. But the point is, we may not have a chance to have this kind of conversation with our father. We may not have a father that responds this way or whatever. But the point is, for us to be able to be okay, for us to say, hey, listen, this is what's going on, this is who I am, this is how I'm showing up. You may need to be honest and have some of those conversations. But what we're learning here at Valiant is, even if that conversation doesn't go well, we can still be okay. And we can break cycles. We can say, hey, like for me, it's like, I may not be able to get everything I need from my parents, but I sure as hell can learn from it and make sure that I'm not repeating the same patterns with my children or my brother or my family. It doesn't have to be father, son, or it's the people around us that we love. And it can be very lonely. Dave and Peter and I talked about this last group. It can be very lonely in recovery when you emerge and the rest of the world is not living in recovery. You feel this way, but the rest of the world is not living in recovery, and you're used to going deep with people now and having these intimate connections, and the rest of the world just wants to hear, fine, how you doing, fine. And I remember the first couple conversations I had out of rehab, it was like, I was going way too deep, way too quick. And they're just like, whoa, I'm just asking how was your day? And I was like, well, I'm really feeling a lot of shame. And they're like, yo, man, I just, you're at Chipotle, just what do you want to eat? But I think there's some loneliness, but we have each other. We have places to process. We don't have to isolate. So I think I would hope that conversation would go really well, and that your dad would want to know more, and especially knowing that he's a pastor. I mean, there's a heart there to help people and to be for people. But even if it doesn't, it's like, okay, I can be okay. I can learn from this, and I have everything I need. So, yeah. Anyone else before we wrap?
I hope I can say what I felt for a moment, but it's really difficult to, particularly in early recovery, it's really difficult to show up at the level of honesty and intimacy that we need. It takes real courage. And I'm asked to be a person that I left behind a long time ago in my addiction. And the opportunity is here, and but it's not easy. I don't think I can get any further than that, but it's back to the honesty. And I've been living in a state of denial in my addiction for so long that I really don't know what the truth is. It's become a mental issue. I can't differentiate between who I am as an addict and who I'm invited to become. That's very challenging. So just don't give up. God damn it.
Well said. Thank you, Mike. It's good stuff, guys.
I just want to say this was worth the trip for me. This was, I mean, when he asked me to come, man, I'd crawl on my belly from Indianapolis for what Valiant has meant to our family. I mean, I can't, there's a debt that I can't repay, but it's been just so good to be with you guys. I mean, I really mean that with all my heart. I think you probably, everyone in here appreciates the uniqueness of what's going on here. I think you do. I'm not even going to encourage you to say that, but I mean, it's here, you know, so it's neat.
Yeah. And I just want to honor you as well. I mean, I think in front of my brothers here, I just want to say I'm very blessed to have you as my dad, and the way you've shown up for me, and so I wanted to have that out there too, that just honor who you are as a man and as a human. I feel very grateful, very glad, very humbled and blessed to have you as a dad. So
Thank you
for being here and for sharing. Can we just say thanks to Dad one more time, Gary, for being here?